The Evergreen Show, taking your business from seed to sapling to towering giant. With your hosts, best-selling author and business growth experts Noah Fleming and Shawn Veltman. This is the only show that gives you proven, pragmatic, and immediately applicable business growth strategies every week in 15 minutes or less. Here's Noah and Shawn.
Well, hello everyone. We are back for another episode of The Evergreen Show. This is Noah Fleming with my co-host, brain surgeon, Mr. Shawn, Dr. Shawn Veltman. Shawn, how are you today? Give me the scoop, my friend.
I'm doing well, Noah. I think we're both in the middle of a Canadian winter cold season, but otherwise things are going great.
I don't know if you mean cold weather-wise or cold in the body-wise, but I'm definitely fighting a cold. I'm getting over it, so apologies in advance if I sound a little stuffed up or if I have to mute myself to cough, but that's just how the cookie crumbles here.
You know, I meant both. I'm feeling a little under the weather myself, and of course you reminded everyone again that we're Canadian by apologizing before anything happened.
Well, I'm sorry for apologizing. What can I say?
You know, fascinating. This is a little side note, but I think it's worth pointing out. In Ontario, in your lovely province, they recently passed a law that said that apologies can't be counted as an admission of guilt because Canadians apologize so often.
Well, there you go. We continue to make the world proud with all of our apologies. just apparently not our choice of fashion and dress when we travel, when our members of government travel to India, but that's another story. So let's talk about referrals today. I think we got to get back into referrals, talk about referrals. You know, to me, referrals is something we talk about a lot, whether we're actually using the specific terminology of referrals or not, or we're talking about the proactive efforts of encouraging word of mouth, because you and I, Shawn, I think we're both believers that word of mouth exists for many companies, but for the majority of companies, we have to create our own word of mouth. We have to create our own spreading of business, and we do that through the concept of referrals. And so you had a great idea about another sort of spin on referrals today. So why don't you give our listeners a little bit of an idea of what you want to talk about, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. So I'll set the stage with a question. And the question is, can you think of a time when you've been working with a business, it's gone all right, and they've said something like, hey, by the way, if you refer anyone to us, we'll give you $200 or we'll give you $500. I remember buying a car 12, 13 years ago, and the dealership had a program where if you referred somebody in, they would give you $500. And I remember at the time thinking that this was one of the worst referral programs that I'd seen. And that's what I want to talk about today, is why something that sounds so good in theory like that is such a bad idea when generating referrals. So what are your thoughts on that? Noah, have you experienced that? And what do you think when something like that happens?
Well, I mean, you experience it, I think, everywhere. I mean, anytime I've seen a referral program done that, we haven't implemented or worked on or helped with, it's always done that way. It's, we will give you some sort of reward for who you can bring in, whether it's the gym, whether it's the insurance guy, whether it's the dentist, whether it's the hospitality business, whatever it is. And so I think, it's definitely not the best way to do things. What I want to give our listeners here today is the better way to do things and why that doesn't work as well as we think it should.
That sounds good. So why don't you start us off? What's wrong with that approach? What's wrong with saying, I'm going to give you money when you bring me in a referral, or I'm going to give you some bonus when you bring in a referral? Why don't you like that? I know why I hate it, and I'll be happy to expound on that, but I want to make sure that we get both points of view out.
Well, for me, when I'm given that sort of bribe or that sort of offer, it kind of takes away the feeling, the intent, the actual emotion or the benefit or the value that business has given me. And so they're kind of saying, look, besides the fact if they've asked me if I've had a great experience or not, they're saying, look, go ahead and tell someone about us and we'll give you this perk, we'll give you this reward. And so it becomes almost a sort of, just really basic internet type of affiliate program where you're just pumping out cash to people in exchange for them telling others about you. And sometimes that cash is a draw for people. They may or may not like the business or trust in the value or the benefit they're giving. And I think that's doing a disservice to all parties involved. To me, a referral, a good referral, should be a win-win-win. It should be a win for the business that's asking for the referral. It should be a win for the person that's giving the referral because he's now sharing value or sharing the benefit that he's received from that company. And it should be a win for the person receiving the value. And I think when we add in this level of exchange or, commission or some sort of cash reward, I think we lose a little bit of that. So that's my take on it.
And I think that's a great way to look at it. It's very close to how I look at it. I was reminded as you were talking there of a section in one of Dan Ariely's wonderful books. I think it was his first one, Predictably Irrational. And he said this: imagine that you're over at Thanksgiving with your significant other's family for the first time. And their mother has made a wonderful Thanksgiving meal, and everyone's had a great time. Then at the end of it, you go up and you say, that was wonderful. Here's $50.
Yeah.
Right? You've transactionalized a relationship that is not a transactional relationship. And in most cultures, in most places, that wouldn't go over so well. And I think what we find is that a lot of companies default to the transactional relationship, even in something like referrals. And referrals are, by their nature, very personal. You're asking somebody to recommend you. You're asking somebody to use their social capital in order to make you more money. And when you transactionalize that, the most crass way of looking at it is to say, look, I don't care if you like us or not, throw somebody at us and we'll give you money. And, it's showing a lack of trust in the value you provide. And it's showing a real lack of understanding of why somebody would refer you. And in many cases, and I know it was the case for me when I experienced this, it's potentially asking you to put a price on that relationship to say, all right, would you give me a referral that you wouldn't have given me otherwise for $100, for $200, for whatever it is? How much do I have to pay you to give me something that you wouldn't have given me otherwise? And that's a really bad position to be in.
So let's look at the flip side of this, though, because I'm curious on your take of this now. So I've been referred to companies where there's potential consulting work, and I've done work with them. And in return, I've given the person who made that referral or made that introduction a little piece of the pie. And that's sort of just, there was no standard agreement in place. There was no expectation, but there was still this perk, this reward, whether cash or anything else given in return. So do you see a place for this and for our listeners to use these techniques, but is there a better way we could be doing it?
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that there should be no gifting or no incentive, but I think that the focus has to change dramatically. So what if, Noah, instead of me saying to you, hey, Noah, by the way, if you refer somebody to me, I'll give you $500. I was to say, Noah, if you refer somebody, I just want you to know I'm going to take such good care of that person, right? Referrals are the coinage of my realm, as your mentor likes to say. It's very important for me, and I want to make sure that I'm honoring your relationship. So anybody that you refer to me, I'm going to go above and beyond. They're going to get a few extra things that I normally charge quite a bit for, just as part of their coming in as a referral. And for you, I'm also going to give you something else. And I just want to say thank you for the referral, and here's how I'm going to take care of the person that you referred to me. See, I think that's such a different positioning, and it's so much more powerful.
Oh, it's so much more powerful, and again, it brings us back to the beginning here. So, when we talk about referrals, and we have on the Evergreen show in the past, right? One of the things that I think is incredibly important is to be aware of when you're asking for the referral. So we've talked before about planting the seed early in the relationship that referrals are the coinage of your realm. They are typically given to you because you do a great job. But, months down the road or after the project's been initiated and the customer's happy, it's a great time to say, look, you've shared with me multiple times all the benefit and value that you've gotten from working with us. Referrals or introductions are incredibly important to us. Who else might you be able to introduce us to that could experience that same value? And then again, it becomes that win-win-win situation. And so I agree. I think perks, there's a time and a place for them. I even think the straight up cash perks that we're talking about that we started with, in some industries, it's kind of the norm, right? And so it's kind of a little bit of an expectation. For example, I see it all the time in the insurance industry. Do you think, based on what we've talked about in the past 10 minutes here or so, do you think there's a better way, again, for even an industry where it is the norm, that they could be improving this?
I think it has to come back to the most general point, which is, what does somebody want when they give you a referral, right? So if you're asking me for a referral, what do I want? Well, what I want is to look good to the person I'm introducing you to. So if I'm going to tell one of my best friends or one of my colleagues that they need to go talk to you, I need to make sure that they're going to be treated in a way that makes me look good for giving that recommendation, right? And I think this is true of anybody who's giving a referral. They're reaching in, they're utilizing some of their social capital, and they're not doing it to put more money in your pocket, right? We've said many times, nobody cares. Nobody wakes up at night saying, how can I give Noah more money? What they want is to feel like they have added to their friend or their colleague's experience, to their lives. So when you're putting together a referral program, I think it's incredibly important to focus first on what is the value over and above your standard service that you're giving to the person who's being referred, or not even over and above your standard service. What's the value over and above what they would get elsewhere that you're adding? Because you have to recognize and honor that whenever you're asking somebody to recommend you, they're putting themselves on the line. And so you have to make sure, it's almost like they're your client. The person giving you the referral is the person that you have to work hard to impress. And you do that by creating a great experience for the person they've referred to you.
Well, they're your client. They're also your sales team, right? They become your sales force, which in return, that's what they do. They go out there and they spread the good word about you. And I think you're right. If they're doing it just because there's a gift card at the end of the rainbow, it brings me back to what you said earlier, right? It's like your word or your reputation is on the line. I keep thinking back to, the old movies where they always used to say, like, do I have your word, Shawn? My word is bond, Shawn. You've got it. And I think, and also we were talking about Black Mirror earlier. This is really some Black Mirror stuff, right? Like giving the wrong introductions, giving the wrong referrals, just because you want the cash, it does decrease your social capital. If you're giving those referrals to businesses that perhaps you didn't have a great experience with, perhaps you don't truly believe in, perhaps you really don't want to spread the word about them, right? So I think by all means, for me, as I'm thinking about this here, as consumers, I think we can all do a better job of proactively giving referrals and proactively spreading positive word of mouth about the businesses we like. I think that's one thing we can do. I think also, as business owners or leaders or wherever we are in the organization, we need to think about what is our referral process? How do we get referrals? How do we ask for them? What is the expectation we have from our customers to give them? And if we are giving them something in return, what is it? Is it a thank you? Is it a perk? Is it a cash reward? And so I think it's all the right things we need to be thinking about. But Shawn, I don't know, it's a fascinating topic to me. And I think, I love the line about the Thanksgiving dinner. I might try that with my mother-in-law. We'll see.
I wouldn't recommend it, but you do you, Noah. You do you. Yeah, so, we're getting to that time where it's time to throw it a challenge. And for me, I think it's simple, is look at your referral program if you have one in place. Look at your offering, and have you ensured that your offering is focused on the person being referred, right? Have you made sure that if you ask John for a referral and he refers in Jane, that your whole referral structure is there to impress Jane and to make John look good? And if it's not, if it's just there to reward John, then you need to change that up. The second thing to think about, and this is something that you and I might talk about quite a bit more in another podcast, is how are you communicating that? How are you communicating the value to the client you're asking to give you a referral so that they know how well their friend or colleague is going to be treated? How are you ensuring that they know that you're not just there to hand them cash in order for them to trade in on their social capital? How are you letting them know that you're going to honor and respect that relationship and really make them look good?
I definitely want to talk about that in a future podcast. I think that's a fascinating topic in itself, just about the parlance of the value that a client has received. How do we ensure that they actually understand and know it? I mean, we inherently think it as business owners and business leaders that our clients feel that way. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But how do we actually encourage those discussions and have those discussions? Is that what you were alluding to there?
I think it is. And I think it's also very specifically on the referral. What tools are you giving your client who you're asking to generate a referral for you to ensure that they're comfortable with it and that they know how to position it, right? So it's not just saying, give me 3 names. It's letting them know who is the best fit, why you're the best fit for that type of person, what benefit the person they're referring will get from you, etc. And making sure that you communicate that to the person you're asking to give you a referral. Right? We talk so often about do the work up front, do more work up front so that your client doesn't have to. And the same thing goes for referrals. You do the work of identifying who you want. You do the work of identifying what's the value proposition. You do the work of making sure that it's easy to communicate that and it's easy for them to see it. And it becomes much easier to ask for and to get that referral versus just saying, give me 3 names, or can you refer somebody to me for some reason? You figure it out, right? That's saying, can you think really hard so that I can make more money?
Well, I think that's a great spot to end it. So we've got the challenge. And so here's how I want to end this for our listeners today. I'm not going to ask you for 3 names, but you can make sharing this podcast with your peers and your colleagues and your coworkers a win-win-win. They will get value from it. They will thank you for giving that value. And we thank you for giving that. And maybe we'll give you a little perk if you're ever in the area. I'll buy you coffee or a beer or something. But thanks for listening, folks. We will see you next week. I think we're coming up on 40 episodes here. Please continue to share the podcast, now available on Spotify, iTunes, everywhere else. So again, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to join us each and every week for another great episode of The Evergreen Show with your hosts, Noah Fleming and Shawn Veltman. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review, and we'll catch you next time on The Evergreen Show.